And we're live. Hey, so welcome to Sports Dev, Mike. Today we have Mohammed. Mohammed, welcome. Thanks for doing this, brother. And I know he's late in London today, so we really appreciate your time coming on. As usual, Sports Dev is brought to you by Aroa Baobab, the most nutritious fruit powder in the world. Get your fruit powder from arewabaobab.com. That's AREWABAOBAB.com. And you get free shipping in North America. Mohammed, thank you for those who didn't bother reading the intro into this. Mohammed is a strong and upcoming UK sports journalist. He focuses on the NFL in London, and he also covers African football, specifically the African Cup of Nations. So, two sports that are kind of close and dear to my heart, and I'm glad to see him in here. And we all know who Mike is. Come on, man. You know what time it is with Mike. Mike is a number one guy on this podcast, so he comes on to talk all the time. But Mohammed, kind of get it kicked off. I mean, what do you make of what's happening right now with the transfer window and the teams? You know, Raheem Sterling, all these things going on, and players moving up and down. You're in
I
London,
mean,
man. What's the vibe like in London right now with all that stuff?
I'm a Napoli fan and a Chelsea fan, right? So
Okay.
having Kalidou Koulibaly go from one team to another team, it's a win-win situation. You know what I'm trying to say? And I've been having this discussion with people on Twitter. By November, everyone's going to reevaluate their best defender in the world rankings. Because right now it seems like Van Dijk is just on a world of his own. No one's close to him. He's the best defender in the world. There's going to be some conversations in a few weeks time because Koulibaly is. I've watched him for years, right? And I feel like if Koulibaly decided to play for France when he was younger, he would be in a much higher category than he is because of who he decided to represent. He does everything that Van Dijk can do. He's just as strong, just as fast, just as good with his feet. And that's going to be huge. Koulibaly to Chelsea is just going to be incredible. And how Thiago Silva's been, that defensive backline for Chelsea is looking amazing. So I think that's
Yeah,
the most important. Mhm.
speaking
What
of Koulibaly, one will argue that it remains to be
Akbar, so
seen. There's always,
how was Koulibaly?
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. You got
No,
it,
I
man.
was going to say Koulibaly. The only argument one would make is no one is going to doubt the quality and pedigree of Koulibaly, and I quite agree with Mo here that if Koulibaly had decided to turn up for France, the discussion we'll have about him today might be slightly in more revert terms than and anyone talking about him. He's been the best defender and best center back in Serie A for the last few years. Now, the only thing one will say is that well, he's been in Serie A for those few years, and I think a lot of people are saying that Serie A is not necessarily the top league in Europe. One would make those arguments with guys like Lukaku coming back and flopping in England and then going back and being stars over there. I would make one slight criticism of Koulibaly is that he tends to lose concentration every once in a while the ball's at his feet, and his
He does.
passing is not that great. But I mean, no one can be perfect. Otherwise, 31 years old, center backs tend to get better, with age. So we'll see how this goes. And I think this is a massive signing for Chelsea. Honestly, it's a big coup. Honestly,
Yeah. What
You
did
know,
you make of what did you make of Koulibaly's performance in Afcon?
I mean, he did what Koulibaly does. I mean, I think they conceded 2 goals in the entire tournament. He missed the first 2 games because of COVID, but Koulibaly was. I mean, he barely had anything to do because when you play for a team that's so much better than everyone else, 90% of the time it's Sadio Mane and Ismail Assar and Buna Dia that have it up front trying to create stuff. I mean, but every time something came his way, he cleaned it up nicely and he dealt with it. He had the most complete. He had the highest completion percentage of any player at Afcon, and he was playing at the back. So his passing completed was. I mean, every time Koulibaly had the ball, you know that you don't need to worry. If someone's going against Koulibaly, you don't need to worry. Whether that be Mohamed Salah, whoever the case may be, you know.
right,
So
right,
it was
right. I think I agree with Mo entirely here. Like Koulibaly basically was, I mean, Senegal. The basis of their team is from the back. They're solid at the back. They have the best goalkeeper in Africa. Plays for Chelsea also. I mean, so that's speaking of which, that's also going to help them as a team going to the World Cup to have their center back and their goalkeeper on the same team, so they have that consistency. Because you want that middle set They have a very solid middle midfield with Gana Gueye. And now you have like a talisman in Sadio Mane. So if you just look at the Senegalese team, this is probably one of the better African outfits we've seen in a long time that's going to go represent Africa in the World
made the
Cup.
argument that this is arguably on paper the most talented African team ever. Because if you look at the teams that these guys play for, there's never been an African team with this quality. Goalkeeper plays for Chelsea. Centre backs now play for Chelsea and PSG. Right back plays for Bayern Munich. Left back plays for AC Milan. The midfielders play for PSG, Leicester. Front men play for what's it called? Marseille, Bayern Munich. You know what I'm trying to say? So there's no team in Africa that you can look at all 11 players playing at the highest level. If you look at England's first 11 and you look at Senegal's first 11, Senegal have more players playing Champions League football on a more consistent basis than England do.
And so, it's not like they're on the bench. These are guys that start. So these are the guys that play the meaningful minute. So again, like I've said, I mean, we've talked about this before, where the Senegalese team on this podcast is basically the hope that we have. I do tend to say that sometimes they don't necessarily live up to the sum of the whole, because individually you can see like the pedigree is there, but sometimes the performances don't always match what the pedigree is in terms of output. But hey, they're maturing, and they won a major championship now. So at this point, you can kind of see that
the thing
this
is
definitely their time.
The thing I'm most excited for watching Senegal is when they play against these African teams. Majority of the time, they are the better team, and they sit back. The other teams sit back, and Senegal are coming onto them. I'm interested to see when a team thinks they're as good as Senegal, like Holland in the first game of the World Cup. I want to see how Senegal approach that game. I want to see if they sit back and they play on the counter attack, because they could be deadly in that way too. I want to know if they're going to decide to keep the ball and take it to the Netherlands. I want to see how they play against European teams or South American teams. That's what I'm looking forward to, because we know that they're clear of any other African nation right now, you know. So
Mohamed, let me ask you this though. I mean, so you said best African team ever. How would you compare them to the golden generation of Cote d'Ivoire, where they had the Drugs, the Yaya, the Gervinhos, and they were all playing for top teams at that time. They underachieved.
I agree. That's only 3 or 4 of the midfield and attackers. If you look at that team at the back, it was like you had players like Didier Zokora and obviously Cheick Tiote who were playing at a decent level, but no one's telling you Didier Zokora is starting in the Champions League game. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like
Zokora was older though, in all fairness.
No, but regardless, Zokora's peak was never a Champions League player. Cheick Tiote, may God rest his soul, was never a Champions League player. You know, Kolo Toure was reaching his older age, although he played at a very high level. In the golden generation, Kolo Toure was kind of old. Their goalkeeper, I think, what was his name? Bobakar.
He didn't play for any top teams.
He was
not a top. He was not a top. In fact, he was the weak link on that team consistently.
So although we know these guys and they were playing at decent levels, they weren't playing for Bayern Munich and PSG and Chelsea on a consistent basis. So that's where I put the difference. Of course, Yaya Toure and Didier Drogba are Yaya Toure and Didier Drogba. But Sadio Mane is still there. But Sadio Mane also has 10 other players that also play at the highest high levels.
But you know, the thing is this: the metric that you're using is.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead now.
You can look at the Senegalese team. I think Mo's right here. I think there's hardly any doubt. It's just the pedigree. It's the proof is in the pudding. You know, the teams that they play for, it's from top to bottom. They typically have very good players. Now, maybe their bench isn't as strong, you know, as the first 11. But, you know, again, one thing I would say, though, is I maintain that overall, I still feel like the Senegalese don't really meet the performance for what you have in the talent. And so this is their time. Having finally overcome that hurdle of being perennial, almost winners, and they finally actually got that championship. Let's see how they can take that mantle now and move on and represent Senegal on the world stage. The game, I would say this, and I think we've talked about this before, the game is a little bit not as fluid as I like it to be. They lack a creative midfielder. That's the one thing they do lack on their team. So, but their brute strength and their athleticism might be able to see them through.
Sick.
But at the end of the day, they're gonna make. I see them being a quarterfinal level team, and maybe just that extra oomph might get them to the semifinal if the ball bounces their way.
They have a if they finish top of their group, they have a pretty easy route to the semifinal. So, and I think they can finish top of their group. I don't think Holland are the best team. I think Senegal can finish top of their group. Then they probably play the USA, and then they play someone like Uruguay or something in the quarterfinals. And hey, you never know.
You're talking about paper. You're talking about paper and permutations. That's why I said the lucky bounds of the. Sometimes these things don't end up working out the way.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden one team finishes second somewhere that shouldn't have finished second in that group, or Senegal ends up getting a red card in the game and they end up losing the game. So again, if all things being equal, I see them being a quarterfinal team. I think that's where their level is at. But I can see a bounce or two allowing them to make a run if things go their way.
Because Mohamed, your point is valid in terms of the caliber of players and the quality of teams they play for, right? And they've won AFCON. So while I brought up the Cote d'Ivoire example, Cote d'Ivoire that team didn't win AFCON, right? They didn't.
I think they did on penalties in 2014, but that was kind of after
it wasn't.
But it wasn't the team with DJ.
It wasn't the team, right? The team that should have won it lost to us in South Africa.
Mm-hmm. The team that should have won it lost to Zambia in the finals on penalty kicks. That's
what AFCON was that? What AFCON was that?
2012. And then 2013, they came back and we beat them the next year.
We beat them when they came back. They were meant to, go all the way, and we knocked them out with a Nigerian team that some may argue, because we had a bunch of home-based players on that team. Some may argue that team shouldn't have even gone, and we ended up winning it, right? So, and when you compare that the current Senegalese team, and you look at the team with El Hadji Diouf and Kalilou Fadiga, that went all the way to the quarterfinals in that World Cup, I believe it was 2002. And beat France in the first game. That team, no one gave them a chance, right? So, and sometimes with African teams, when you do give them a big head and you kind of put a lot of hope on them, they tend to falter. And what do you think about that? And whether that's
I 100% agree with you. I 100% agree with you. And this is the conversation I have with my dad and my friends. And like, you can't put too much hope on African teams because there's just something holding us back. Right. But the reason I feel like this could be different is because you have 10 guys playing in the Champions League week in and week out. It's different to Didier Drogba, Yaya Toure, Solomon Kalou, and then guys that are playing in the Premier League. I mean, obviously the Premier League is an incredible league, but I mean, that are playing for 9th place teams, 10th place teams. These guys are playing in Champions League finals. So I don't think this is a team that pressure is an issue. Playing in Champions League finals, competing, winning the league on a regular basis is different.
Well, yeah. So the thing about this is that I think I don't remember who it was, but it was an analyst or a group that broke down the champions of the World Cup or semifinalists for the World Cup, and they mentioned that consistently speaking, you have to have a core group of your players playing up to at least past the quarterfinals of the Champions League. And when you have a core group of your players playing at that level, that's a marker, a very good indicator of success in the World Cup. So, I think to get to your point where you were talking about the fact that, African teams tend to struggle with expectation. You're right about that. And I think a lot of it is mentality, but I think Mo is really hitting this on the head here. It's the level of play, that pressure that you've been under before. Have you played at that level? If you played at that level, then you know how to handle that pressure. France from the last World Cup. Look at their squad. Just about the entire squad is just ripe with top-level players who handle that pressure. And so when they get into situations like that, they know how to handle the expectations of being front-runners.
England got to the Euro final. Their goalkeepers never played Champions League football before. Their midfield have never played Champions League football before. Harry Kane is not a regular player in the Champions League. You know what I'm trying to say? So the core of their team have Harry Maguire. He plays for Man United. He's in they're in the Champions League sometimes. Sometimes they're not in Champions League. And you know Harry Maguire. He's Harry Maguire. What's it called? Calvin Phillips never played in the Champions League. Declan Rice never played in the Champions League. You know, so but then you go through Senegal's team, Idrissa Gana Gueye, quarterfinal Champions League every single year. Kalidou Koulibaly, one of the top 2 centre backs in the world. Sadio Mane won the Champions League 2 years ago. Mendy won the Champions League 2 years ago. Bouna Sarr in the Champions League with Bayern Munich every single year, albeit he doesn't play as much.
Was in the semi-finals just this year that just passed. So you're right. You're right.
Well, I mean, no, but is the focus is the factor really? Is it Champions League or is it big games? Because if you,
but it doesn't get any bigger than Champions League.
No, Champions League is the biggest because it's being watched around the world. But if you play in big games week in, week out, even if you play Europa, right, and you play EPL, and you're playing in front of, EPL crowd, stadiums are sold out, and the level of competition, and you're playing week in, week out, doesn't that keep you sharp enough to the point where even if you're not playing a Champions League, right, you're still functioning at such a high level that you can perform in the World Cup?
In the level, though, you know what I'm trying to say? Like, functioning at a high level in the Champions League is different to functioning at a high level away to Fulham and away to Bernabeu. They're both functioning at a high level, but one, like the Bernabeu, Craven Cottage, there's a massive difference. You know what I'm trying to say?
No, there is.
And even the Bernabeu on a Champions League night is different than the Bernabeu on a regular La Liga night. Exactly. You're playing against 4th place team in Spain. Completely different atmosphere because that pressure is completely different. So yeah, the Champions League is the top of the top. And when you play,
so let me ask you guys this. Let me ask you guys this then. So how do you explain those teams that kind of struggle in domestic or cup championships within their country, but then they succeed in the Champions League?
And you're not going to find too many of those teams. That's first of all. And second of all, a lot of those teams, a lot of times, they're not paying attention to those league. Like, let's just take Real Madrid, for example. That's exactly what I was going to say. They've won so many Champions League titles, and they've won less domestic championships over the last 10 years, and they've won Champions League. They focus their efforts on the Champions League. They know that on Champions League Wednesday, or Tuesday or Wednesday, this is where we're at. In fact, the league games are almost like just like setbacks for them, or like come down.
They have rested players on a Saturday or a Sunday because they've got a big game on Tuesday and Wednesday. Barcelona were never resting players. That's why Barcelona have dominated in the league, but Real Madrid over the last 5-6 years have absolutely dominated in Champions League. They won 4 of the last 6 Champions Leagues. Do you know how insane that is?
No, 100% it is. So, but the thing is this. Then, if we go by that same reasoning, Germany shouldn't have been knocked out last World Cup in the preliminary stages. Brazil in the last 2 World Cups.
No, what we're saying is when you look at the teams that are successful, that's the marker of success. That doesn't mean it's 100% of the time. And the Germans, they have their own. The Germans have been in decline for the longest prior to even the World Cup. It's not like they just showed up to the World Cup and just all of a sudden laid an egg. And also, there's also that thing where, it just consistently seems to be the case. When you win the World Cup one year, the next World Cup, you tend not to be as good. Maybe it's over-reliant.
But why do you think that's the case, though? Like, is there another factor? I'm asking this because maybe is there another factor that's missing?
They failed to get out the group stage in 2010. I don't know why it is. It's just the World Cup curse, I guess. But it just happens.
Because if you look at, I'll give you an example.
Motivation, perhaps anymore.
Yeah, Germany go through their own little problems anyway with Muller and Ozil and then the whole Neuer getting dropped, and then Bayern Munich saying, if Neuer's not playing, we're not going to send you any more of our players, blah blah. So Germany had their own problems. Italy were going through a rebuild and a recycle. That's why they missed the World Cup, but then they won the Euros. You know what I'm trying to say? Obviously, they shouldn't have missed it again this time around. But there's explanations for all of that. But just comparing this Senegalese team to African teams of past, I think there's a gulf between them, in my opinion.
No question about that. In terms of their quality, based on world standard of football, they're up there.
Like
player for player, right? You can't deny them that. But the reason why I'm examining this is trying to see what other factors are out there that kind of make certain teams underachieve, if you will. So, you have all these pieces. You look at a team on paper and you're like, wow, these guys are fantastic, right? So if you look at that game between Senegal and France in 2002, Senegal had no business winning that game, right?
Well, but
Or
they did.
but they did, right? Or if you look at
I'm saying they
the
had
game,
business because they were motivated.
correct?
Motivation
Or
is a big factor. The fact that a lot of those guys, this was their chance to shine. They can't neglect the fact that France is an old colonial master of Senegal, and so those guys are probably even more motivated to face France. Then France themselves probably a little bit less motivated. They just won. They had just won the World Cup in 1998 and Euros in 2000. So all of those probably they were like not as top, and they probably kept players that were a little past their prime just because of loyalty. So you can't deny that. Now, one of the things you were saying is why is it some of these teams don't tend to live up to the expectation or don't make it as far? Well, sometimes also there's that weight of expectation that they just haven't gone through before. If you've never done it, it's hard to just do it. So now one of the reasons why we like Senegal to a certain extent is because they've done something now. They've won the African Cup of Nations. That's a big deal. Just like in 1994 with Nigeria, the first time going to the World Cup. It helped tremendously that they were coming off the back of winning the African Cup of Nations in 1994. So they now knew that, hey, we are winners. Mentality is a huge factor in sports. You can't overwrite that. So when you've never done it, sometimes it's hard for you to believe that it's possible to be done. And when you've done it, you feel like you can conquer anything.
So you feel, I mean,
let alone African teams. How many teams in the world can say they have a top 2 goalkeeper in the world, a top 2 centre back in the world, and a top 3 Ballon d'Or attacker playing for them? Like France, Brazil, anyone. You know what I'm trying to say? So knowing that you have this type of quality in your team is going to motivate the rest of them around them. And then going back to what Mike was saying, they're literally coming off a win 6 months prior. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, so if they had lost in the final, it would have been a completely different story because they're still coming off the back of that loss. Now they know how it feels to win. And on top of knowing how it feels to win, they know we've got some world-class players here. So that just motivates everyone around them. And I don't know, I just feel very, very confident about this Senegal team. And apart from France, Brazil, in a one-game knockout game, world-class players win games, and I'm taking Senegal over most teams.
The only reason why I'll say just pump your brakes a little bit is that you can realize that only so many countries have ever won the World Cup, and it's in this. There is something to be said
for win it or like that. But I believe Senegal can make a very
deep interesting. I think the semifinals is within the realms of the possibility, but they would need things to fall in their way for that to happen. It's within reach. And if I think if anything below quarterfinal, they should be disappointed, in my opinion.
And then you get to the semifinal, and then you get like a Croatia or a Spain or a Portugal. Hey, anything can happen, man. But we'll see how it goes.
If we get to the semifinals, anything can happen. It's 90 minutes of football.
Once you get to that level, it's a flip of the coin, man. Yeah, but I think my thing with Senegalese team is, yeah, their quality is top notch, and yes, they did win AFCON, but they seem to, when I watch them, they seem to play to the level of competition, if you will. And they also, if you look at that final game against Egypt, right? Yeah, I know the Egyptians kind of sat back a lot. They really sat back, and Senegal controlled almost everything in that game. But that Egyptian team made him work for that win hard. You know what I mean? And even in the qualifications, right? Senegal was a better team.
I've never seen a team more lucky than Egypt in my entire life, bro. Any other game or any other time, any other goalkeeper, Senegal scored 6 in both games, bro. Like
that goalkeeper had a game of his life.
I was seeing some saves I've never seen in my life. God was with them for real, bro. You know what I'm trying to say? I've never experienced anything like that. You see Sadio Mane missing one-on-one.
No, but that's what I was saying, and that's my only beef with Senegal. They're not very fluid. In fact, the word I was looking for earlier is they're a rigid team. Like they rely more on their physicality and pace down the flanks. the technique needs to be refined a little bit more, and that's actually kind of one of the issues we have in African football. Like the wingers crosses are not usually precise. It's more of brute strength, and and when you play in the World Cup, that's not enough, unfortunately. And I think that's the one thing they're lacking is that, again, I said it earlier, is that key midfielder that can actually hold onto the ball and unlock a defense. So they usually rely on long balls down the wings, and then Sadio Mane chasing balls down and making something happen. And Ismail Assar, if he's playing with Sadio, being the other chief tormentor and the foil for Sadio Mane. So that's the only thing. Otherwise, in that game against Egypt, man, we say the goalie. I mean, obviously, the Egyptian goalie was exceptional in that match. He should have been man of the match that game. But I think Senegal actually flopped their lines quite a bit. I mean, Sadio Mane missed the penalty in the first 5 minutes of that match, so that's the pressure was probably on them. It was a lot of pressure on them. It was Egypt. No one gave Egypt a chance after they lost to Nigeria in the first round, and seeing the performances all through the tournament, it was just very insipid. They were just relying on Mo Salah to do something. Mo Salah, really, if you think about it, from that tournament, he didn't really do anything, and he never really was the same even after the tournament in the Premier League.
Journalist of African football, bro. That would have been the biggest. It would have been. My goodness, I wrote an article comparing Egypt's run to the final to Greece's run to the final.
They were terrible. They were. But speaking of African football, though, I don't know. Have you guys been watching any of the Women's African Cup of Nations at all?
No, you've been keeping me up to date. I've missed most of the games, but
Oh wow! I would say this: the quality. Just a slight recap. If you give me a little bit of a chance. One of the problems we're having in CAF right now is that CAF has decided to turn youth tournaments and women's qualifying for the youth tournaments and the women's tournaments into regional competitions. And a lot of people are arguing that that's not putting forth the best quality, the best countries, because traditionally speaking, the West African teams have always dominated the youth team, the under 17, under 20s, and the women's football in Africa, where you have the likes of Ivory Coast, Ghana, Nigeria, and although Cameroon is not necessarily West Africa, but for all intents and purposes, they are. Those typically are the strongest teams on the continent, and then South Africa joins in, and maybe Zambia and a bunch of other countries pull up the rear. Equatorial Guinea is one couple. But now with CAF's new system, they have the zones qualification in the zone. So now West African teams have to all battle each other, and only one or two will come out of that. The argument is that for CAF is that it's helping to develop all the other parts of the continent, and whether youth or women's football. But the corollary to that argument is that we're not putting forth our best teams to the World Cup because these competitions, the under 17, under 20, AFCONs, and the WAFCON, are the qualifications for the World Cup. Hence, for the first time, we see a country like Zambia qualifying for the World Cup. Not a bad team. I'm not saying they are. Senegal. And although now, because the Women's World Cup has increased to 32 slots, Africa has a possibility of having two more teams qualify through an intercontinental playoff. But be that as it may, one thing I would say watching this tournament, which I did follow quite a bit, is that the standard of play in the women's game has improved. It's nowhere near the European standard. I know England is celebrating today having beaten Spain in the quarterfinals in a game that went extra time, and it was quality football, especially from the Spaniards. But the standard of play has gotten better. Nigeria has always won the tournament. I believe we won 9 out of 11, but they didn't win the semifinals against Morocco under what some people call dubious circumstances when they had 2 players sent off. If you ask me, I'll say they deservedly were sent off, but they showed a lot of valiance by hanging on for an hour with 9 women to at least take the game to penalty shootouts where they ended up losing. The finals is between South Africa and Morocco, the host country. The Moroccans, they're being coached by an ex. I'm sorry?
When is that game?
That game will be on Saturday. I believe it's on Saturday. It's on Saturday. I think the Moroccans are being coached by an ex-coach of Lyon, and he's a former. He's won 2 Champions Leagues in the European Champions Leagues with Lyon in the past. So they actually invested in their program, and you can see the quality of their play is top notch. Perhaps they just don't have the finishing, which they should have buried Nigeria, quite frankly, at being playing a man 2 women up for 60 minutes in extra time. But South Africa has a pretty decent team also, but these teams are not really at the level of what I'm seeing in the European game. But having said that, the quality of play in Africa has definitely gotten up. I would say we need to give more attention to the women's
The
game
women, absolutely.
overall. Yeah, not just in Nigeria.
No, I agree. I think we've talked about this before, especially in Nigeria. When you just mentioned the number of trophies and the number of AFCONs for women and how many they've won, compare that to the men, it's night and day. They've won more trophies, and I think we've talked about this about them being arguably the most successful African team period in terms of championships they've won and how they've qualified and what they've done. And
How,
it's a shame.
sorry, how do Nigeria's women team do in the World Cup generally? Because I'm assuming they get there quite often.
So they've been to every single World Cup and have only made the quarterfinals once, unfortunately.
Okay.
So the victories in Africa doesn't really translate, and that's really the big issue. And some of that is just exposure. Also, the
Exposure.
women are starting to become more exposed. But now the women are playing all over. You have a lady like Asisat Oshala, who has been a 4-time African Women's Player of the Year, and I think the current one. She plays for Barcelona,
Barcelona,
and
yeah.
and with Barcelona was just in the finals of the Women's Champions League just this last. I think they lost to Lyon again, but she was the top scorer in the league, and she missed about 6 to 8 weeks of that league due to injury. Of course, she's playing with the best players in the world. So, in fact, speaking of just that, there's often this conversation that Asisat doesn't really replicate her form in club
When
level
she
on the
in
national
Nigeria,
team when she comes to the national team, and
yeah.
that actually she actually got injured in the very first game of this competition. And a lot of people will tell you that Nigeria looked a lot better when she was gone than when she was there playing, because oftentimes they want to lump the ball to her at every given opportunity. Play was a little more coordinated, but I'll say maybe with the margins being so fine in the semifinals, we truly missed her.
Yeah, the thing is, when you look at that Nigerian team, I haven't seen any other games recently, but overall, like what you were saying, like Mike just mentioned that they've got to the quarterfinals. Our men have never gotten to the quarterfinals, right? So even on that level, they've achieved more than our men. So when you look at the Nigerian game, they need to allocate more resources, more money, better training of coaches for the women, because they've definitely shown that with the limited resources they have, with the cultural factors, Mohammed, and I know you know what I'm talking about. They've, despite all of that, they've been able to do what they've done, and that speaks
Dominate.
volumes. Yeah, it speaks volumes, man. They definitely need to get more money to them, need to give them more support, and need to help them grow. To transition here, there was something Mike and I have debated on this platform, which is the number of teams that go to the World Cup for men. Um, they're trying to Mike's laughing. They're trying to increase the number of teams in Africa.
Bro, I don't even care how
Um,
many teams are in the World Cup. Just give us more African teams, bro. There's no excuse that a continent that has 13 countries in South America should have 4 teams in the World Cup, but a country with 52 countries have only 5. Do you know how ridiculous it is that teams like Ivory Coast don't even get to the final qualifying stage? And bro, it makes no sense, bro. It makes no sense.
Yeah, Mohammed, this is an argument, a conversation that we've had and rehashed, and I don't know that we have all the time to just go through all that again, but I would say this, and I made this point very, very clear and succinct back then. When you start saying 13 in South America, right? It removes, you kind of sort of ignore the fact that when you look at the rankings of those teams, most of those teams are higher ranked than most of the African teams. But then here's the other thing I said, and I made this point, and this was like my point. When you look at the number of teams that qualify, so they get what they get four. They get 4 automatic and 1 continental, right? If you look at the competition they always have, it's the same 6 teams that always qualify from South America. It's the same 6 teams. It's not like it's so big, and that tells me that it's the rank. I want to see the best teams in the World Cup. In fact, for me personally, the World Cup is about to get diluted because now I think they're going to increase to, was it 40 countries are about to be in the World Cup in Canada and America. So now qualification almost becomes irrelevant now because everybody that's worth anything is going to qualify. The U.S. and Mexico are guaranteed to always be there now. The top 5 South American teams are guaranteed to always be, but they always have been guaranteed anyway. The top 3 South American teams are always guaranteed, no matter what. If you look at it historically, if they're in the rankings, it's the same countries that always qualify from South America. So it's always Brazil and Argentina that have the slot. Then Uruguay. The revolving doors between Uruguay, Colombia, and really one more team that Peru just happened to crack
It's actually 46. It's actually 48 teams in the next World Cup.
Exactly. So now, I think the argument we're making now is going to be moot. I do not want to see low quality football in the World Cup. I'm sorry. When Ivory Coast doesn't qualify, they don't deserve to be there.
No,
sorry,
but if you look at some of the teams that missed out, and I missed out, for example. You're telling me if Italy goes to the World Cup, it will be lower quality. You're telling me if Ivory Coast and Nigeria go to the World Cup, it will be lower quality. I don't think so.
But sometimes, my friend, some good quality teams are going to miss out. That's the beauty. That's the beauty of the World Cup. Guess what? Nigeria did not qualify because of a numbers crunch. They didn't qualify because they couldn't beat Ghana. They couldn't score. They couldn't beat Ghana at home in Nigeria. Simple as that.
Nigeria went out because of
and quite frankly, we had this argument, and in fact, with this conversation, I already predicted that Nigeria was not going to qualify once we're there.
Really?
I did that. It's on record. So it wasn't a surprise because you got to look at all the factors that led to that particular moment, and they were doing everything. Literally, they were doing everything in their power to not qualify, and it bit them in the behind. You know,
Mohamed, it wasn't a function of quality of players; it was a function of management and selection.
Part of it.
I'm not aware of what goes on management-wise because I don't follow Nigeria football obviously as close as you guys. Yeah. I'm just looking at it from a quality perspective. You know what I'm trying to say? I saw what happened to Ghana at the African Cup of Nations. I saw how well Nigeria started the African Cup of Nations without Victor Osimhen. I put all of that together and I was like, okay, there's no way in hell, no matter what happens, that this Ghana team goes to Nigeria and gets a result. There's just no way. But then...
that's what I'm saying about that X factor, right? Because when Ghana plays Nigeria...
Credit to Ghana.
They die on the field of playoffs. That's how
they're ready for them. For Nigeria, it's a game we have to win. For them, it's life or death.
Life or death.
No. Like it becomes listen, whatever it takes. And they literally do whatever. They moved that game from Accra to where they play. Was it in Kumasi?
Yeah.
They did that on purpose because of the number of Nigerians in Accra. Right? They do everything. And you know what? Watching 2 legs of that game, I give them credit because they hired this guy that was a Ghanaian-born German guy, German-born Ghanaian who came in and you really revamped the tactics.
You got to give them credit.
Yeah, I give them credit.
They showed something in those games. Yeah. You know what I'm trying to say? Like they looked set up. They looked strong.
You said the key word, Mohamed. They had a coach, we didn't. Simple as that. They had a coach, we did not. And another thing too, like, you know, Victor Osimhen is a great name, but Nigeria has overrated players. Our Nigerian players are average. That's just the truth of the matter. Okay, so that's a good segue. Look at the transfer market.
He's harsh. He's harshest. Just so you know, he's harshest on Nigerian players.
Look.
Because he expects
how many top clubs are fighting over Nigerian players? We're looking at a guy, Emmanuel Dennis. He's looking like Nottingham Forest is the best looking club that is looking like it's seriously trying to get him.
But context, Emmanuel Dennis spent a lot of time injured last year. He didn't get to showcase himself that well last year. If we're being honest,
Dennis showcased himself as well as he showcased himself. He was responsible for 45% of goals that Watford had. By the time it was a fait accompli that Watford was going to get relegated, everybody already knew that this guy doesn't belong in this. He's a higher level than Watford. He had already established himself. His problem is an attitude problem, and also he's not a team player. You know, he's all about himself. Look, Victor Osimhen is the only.
I don't think Emmanuel Dennis should be starting for Nigeria anyway. You know what I'm trying to say? I think it should be.
Well, I'm just giving an example. Look at the other guys. Look at. I mean, what Nigerian player are you rating? Victor Osimhen and Wilfred Ndidi. That's it.
Chikwueze from
not that, his production is not that great. His output is not that great. He's non-player, but he's non-player of the year in League. Is anybody jumping over the door to like get? He's in the transfer market. Nons is saying, okay, we're accepting that he's going to leave. No one is knocking on the door trying to sign him.
I'm talking about Chikwueze from Villarreal.
Chikwueze flatters to deceive. He's not a regular in Villarreal. Jeremy Pino gets more playing time if he's healthy. You know what I'm saying? One of the reasons why, I mean, I'm not saying the players but they're average. They're not as good as no one is knocking on the doors trying to get these guys. The guys that got solid transfers this transfer windows were not Nigerian-born players. Joe Aribo and Calvin Bassey, they were both raised in England. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. What are the transfers? You see Nigerian players are transferring to Fenerbahce. That's the level. They're transferring to Nottingham Forest from Bundesliga. Taiwa Wuni. That's the level. The transfer market doesn't lie. How you're rated is where you're going to go. We just talked about Senegal. Look where their players play. No one's ever going to be like, oh, Senegalese players, they play and not just play.
All of this being said, you guys were knocked out of the African Cup of Nations with a goalkeeping error. You guys were knocked out of the World Cup with a goalkeeping error. No, but I'm saying, but as bad as you're making it seem right now, that as bad as hard as things are, you lot could have made a deep run in the African Cup of Nations, and you would have been at the World Cup. If
woulda, coulda, shoulda, but didn't. What's consistent is that we got knocked out of the African Cup of Nations, and we didn't make the World Cup. Those are not flukes. You know, those things didn't happen in a vacuum. They were like series of decisions and situations occurred. You know, I mean, even our other supposed world-class players
from an outside looking in, I saw Nigeria dominate 2 games against Ghana. Games that they should have won and games that they got unlucky.
No. They dominated in the game in Kumasi. I agree with you. Yeah. But again, the one chance that fell to Moses Simon, he fluffed his lines. That was a chance of the game. Quality is not. He's not that quality. They're average players. In Lagos, I disagree with you. The second half was completely dominated by Ghana.
In Abuja.
That second half. By the time it was time for, we didn't even mount any offensive against Ghana in that second half. Barely. In the game where we needed to go home.
That's what disappointed me the most. In the last 30 minutes of the game, you guys throw everything at it. That's what, because it was 1-1 at the time. You need one goal to qualify for the World Cup. I'm surprised that you let that game wither away the way you did. And that's what surprised me the most, and that's what disappointed me.
Mentality and average players. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. In Africa, you can do well with average players because you're playing teams like Sudan, teams like Guinea-Bissau.
And I would have much preferred Nigeria, quality-wise, over Ghana to be in the World Cup from a neutral anyway.
Exactly.
I agree with you on that.
But you have to earn it. You can't hope to get there. You have to earn it on the field. And the team that deserve to go over the 2 legs, they deserve.
Did you guys see the Cameroon and Algeria game? Did you guys get?
Oh yeah. That was insane. Talk about a game.
So I was watching. The thing is, I like to do this thing because I've got I've got all African TV in it, so I like to watch it on African TV. So I was watching the extra time on Algerian TV. When Algeria scored the goal in the 118th minute, the guy was crying. Allahu Akbar. Oh, yes. Allah. And my dad was like, yo, I wouldn't be surprised if they concede, like, because they brought God into it so much. Bro, all goes in. Toko, it can be. It was unbelievable. Absolute.
I tell you what, man. Mohamed, I tell you what, Cameroon's a dark horse, man. The thing about those Cameroon, and I mentioned this to Mike, I said, just when you count them out, when you think that these guys are not going to amount to anything, they shock you. And that's what they did in that qualification series. I remember Mike and I talking about it, and he was saying that, listen, Algeria has not been beaten in Algeria in a long time. And that was the truth. But these guys went there against all odds. And that's what Cameroon does. 1990 World Cup, game against Italy. What they do, right? Or was it Argentina? Argentina, yeah. What they do, right? These guys I
They
swear to
had
you,
2 men sent off in that match.
Cameroon, when you don't pay attention to them, and the one thing I'll give this Cameroonian team is when I watch them, what hits me the most is how athletic these guys are. These guys are there's some really good athletes on that team all across the board. When you watch them run, how physical, how strong. If they go in there and they just include some kind of tactical sense to it,
That game is so Mohammed in Nigeria we say it's gra gra. That's what they play when they
gra
call it
gra,
gra gra football. It's just brute strength, and
brute
they just
strength.
brute strength.
Mohammed, you're not gonna beat
There's
these guys
something
on
about them, bro.
physicality.
There's
Let me
something
put it that way
touch
too.
I don't know what
Yeah.
it is. They've got something about them.
I don't know, man, but it's dependent. I don't know. Do you know what Cameroon's group is like in the World Cup?
They've
I
got a
think they
pretty
play
reasonable
Brazil.
group. I think they're in the same group as I know they're in the same group as Brazil, I believe. Brazil,
Forget what the other
Switzerland.
ones. I mean, all we have to do is look it up real fast. I had this before, but I've forgotten. I know it's Brazil.
Yeah, it's Brazil, Switzerland, Serbia, and Cameroon.
Outside of Brazil, it's up in the air, man.
I
think the Swiss have a good team, but against that Cameroonian physicality, I think
all three teams in that group, other than Brazil, are very well matched, and anything can happen.
Yeah.
I think
I love Serbia personally. I love Serbian football. I like how they play. I love their players. When you take a look at Kolarov, I used to love Kolarov when he played for Man City.
Guys, Ghana and Uruguay in the same group.
Yeah, man. But Ghana and Uruguay in the same group. That's gonna be sick. But believe it or not, I think my money's on Ghana this time. I think Ghana beats them because these Ghanaians.
Uruguay's old now.
Yeah, Uruguay's old. Cavani's not the same guy. Suarez could still do one or few things, but he's not the same guy. Plus, the Ghanaians have a reason.
And they got about 4 more foreign-born players, including Inaki Williams and Tariq Lamptey, to commit to Ghana.
Yeah, Hudson-Odoi has joined them too. Listen, and Ghana has a reason.
I know, Boma, you like
Tariq Lamptey. I love that kid, man. Love that kid. And I think this Ghanaian team just changed. And Ghana, one thing I know about them, when they have a reason to play you, and they have a reason, they have a vendetta, a personal vendetta against Uruguay. Suarez is in that game.
I think for the first time, African teams have been blessed in their groups, and I think we could see maybe 3 or 4 in the round of 16 this year.
I hope so, Mo, because that was also my argument when and just doubling back a little bit on that whole number of teams to come out of the group stage, and I didn't want to rehash the whole argument because we have a whole episode of literally spent about 20 minutes just discussing that whole topic, maybe even longer. But a couple of things I mentioned was that when you talk about if there were so many great teams out of Africa, right, then we'll see more variety in the number of countries that qualified. But 2010, 2014, and sorry, let me go back. 2010 and 2014, it was the same exact 5 countries that qualified out of 54. You can look it up. When you go back in the history of African qualifiers, there's only so many teams. There's only like a sample of 7 or 8 countries that always qualify. Those are the countries. That's it. So I don't want to see Zambia if they're not good enough. Maybe the Zambia of Kalusha Bwalia in the mid-90s.
In the Mali and Tunisia game, I would have liked to see Mali at the World Cup.
But Mali, it's funny. I said the same because Tunisia doesn't do anything when they go to the World Cup. They don't.
They just go there to lay down. That's all they do.
Let me finish this point I'm trying to make. If you allow me for a second here, the point I'm trying to make is when you go back, African teams are not making it out of the group stage. Point blank, they're not making out a group stage, and that's going back to lots of World Cups. Go back to 19 since Cameroon made it. In 1990, it was only Cameroon, so that kind of ignored. But that, of course, there was only 2 countries that qualified then. But it was only Cameroon. When they gave us more slots in 93 and 94, Nigeria was the only country that qualified. Morocco didn't. Tunisia didn't that year. If you go to 2000 and 1998, Nigeria made it out of the group stage. Morocco had a chance to do it. They flopped their lines on the last game again with what's his name, Haji. that squad that they had. If you go to 2002, Senegal was out of the group. I don't remember any other African country that qualified.
But then again, bro, I feel like it's a double-edged sword though, because when you have less teams in there, you have less chance to come out the group stage.
You have five teams in the Africa has 5 teams. It consistently had 5 teams since 2002.
But all you need is 2 of them to be in very difficult groups, and you've already knocked them out.
But more, you're making excuses. I'm giving you historical precedent since.
You're right.
You can make excuses all you want. These are the realities. The countries that are the best, it's the same countries that go. It's always Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia, Nigeria, Ghana, Cameroon, Cote d'Ivoire. That's it. Egypt will join in every once in a while. Actually, you don't even count Egypt. Don't go to the World Cup. And maybe an odd team Senegal is starting to join the mix now, right? It never used to beat them. Togo oddly went one year. Angola oddly went another year. That's it. No South Africa. But again, if those teams I mentioned are the only ones that consistently usually go, it's a pool of about 7 countries that go consistently, and they don't qualify. Nigeria has been out of it. They came out of it in 2014. But that team, nobody even looked at that team and said that's a good team.
Oh, Mike, let me ask you this though. Do you think if a team qualifies for the World Cup, if they give us more slots than a team that typically doesn't qualify goes, do you think it helps the overall development of football in that country?
I'm pretty sure it probably does. But look, it's not a charity case. This is the World Cup. If you look, the development stage of football is on the 17s and on the 20s. That's where you see a lot more countries going in. You develop your game at home. You develop on your continent. You don't develop it at the highest stage. It's like asking the NFL to be a developmental league. I don't want to see developmental teams in the National Football League. It's the top league. I don't want to see developmental teams in the Premier League. I want the best 20 teams to be out there. Granted, there's always going to be 2 teams that are not as good as the top. That's why they get relegated. You see what I'm saying? So, this is, again, the World Cup. I want to see
I agree. I don't want charity teams, but I would also like to see Ivory Coast and, you know what I'm trying to say?
Well, if Ivory Coast deserves to go to the World Cup, they will qualify. And they did that for 2010, 2014, and 2006, 2002. You know why? They were the best team in Africa at that time. No one was going to argue with that. And Ivory Coast case, yes, we can argue they were always unfortunate. They always seem to be in a group of death every single time. But that's not true in 2014. They blew it in 2014 against Greece at the last. Greece, of all countries. That's where they lost. They conceded in the last minute to a penalty when they had the game under control. Again, let's look inward, man. We can't be looking for charity cases. We need to develop our game. Our quality of our game needs to step up. The technicality of our football needs to step up. We need to develop more midfielders in the African game, and we need to learn how to manage the games and when we have these games. I mean, look at Nigeria in 2018. We're playing against Argentina where a draw is all we need. And we concede a goal in the last minute. And these things are always because, quite frankly, we're not there yet. When the top teams, when Nigeria is making those silly errors, is it Zimbabwe that you want to come into the World Cup as an 18 that's going to put in a good show? No.
All due respect to Zimbabwe. All due respect. You gotta put that in there. But I think they're increasing it anyways. Regardless of what we think, they're going to increase the numbers. And I'm curious to see how CAF changes up the qualification setup for us to how they're going to set it.
I think what's unfair is the qualification setup where you got 10 groups and only the top team in the group goes through. And then, you know what I'm trying to say? It's such a grueling process, because then you get a situation that happened where you got Ivory Coast and Cameroon in the same group, and you know one of them is going to miss out on the World Cup. You know what I'm trying to say? Yeah. So it's basically an elimination when they play each other. So I feel like
in the qualification for 2018, the group was Zambia, the defending African champions. Right? I'm sorry. I take that back. They're not the defending African champions. It was Algeria, Cameroon, the defending champions, Zambia, and Nigeria. Those are the 4 countries in that group, in that final group, and only one was going to make it up to the World Cup. Do you know the reason why all those countries? Well, Zambia, obviously, for obvious reasons, we know they're the least of the pedigree of those countries. Cameroon at the time had been going through a low spell. Algeria had been going through a low spell, a little bit of a low spell. Actually, so I take that back. Nigeria had been going through a little bit of a low spell because we hadn't qualified for the previous two AFCONs. After winning the AFCON in 2013, we missed out in 15 and 17. So our ranking in Africa was really low. It's all based on rankings, you know. So it is what it is, man. It is what it is. Somebody's gonna miss out. Somebody's gonna miss out because you know why they're gonna miss out? Because their rankings are like from 20 something. Maybe the top team in Africa is in the 2020. I mean, Senegal this year, I think, in the top 20. But typically, Africa's top team is 20 something in the ranking, and the 10th ranked team is usually in the 60 something. So I'm not going to be expecting a 65th ranked team to display. I want to see
Senegal's 18th. Senegal's 18th.
Yeah, so Senegal's 18th this year. That's unusual. Most of the time, the top African country is not in the top 20. Most of the time, the South African team is inside or outside of the top 20. It's unfortunate. You may argue about the FIFA rankings, but look, that's what we have. When you look at South America, you have at least 3 teams within the top 15, typically. Maybe not right now, because I think South America is going really low right now.
They've got 4 teams in the top 20.
So are you saying, you can't argue that it's unfair for those top 4 teams to be in the World Cup? You can argue all you want to, but those are the 4 teams in the top 20.
Yeah, but how many teams are they increasing the slots for Africa?
They're going from 32 to 48, so everybody's qualifying now.
Yeah, so you're going to see Madagascar and Sao Tome. Sao Tome is qualifying.
Like Nigeria, we're not making anybody 10-0, and we just want a match on the continent. And I know it happens in Europe too, but come on.
Well, Mohamed, look, I know you're from Somalia, so hopefully, Somalia gets to qualify. That would be pretty cool.
Let's get to AFCON first.
Yeah, no, you know what? It all starts from somewhere. And here's the thing, like this is Sports Dev series, right?
Real quick, before we move on, are you guys aware of the Chan competition that's happening in Africa?
Oh yeah, we follow that very, very closely.
Yeah,
champion. What's it called? The African Championship, something.
Yeah, domestic players across the
board.
I'm
really looking forward to that. I'm really looking to see how these teams match up with players only from the domestic leagues. I'm really looking forward to that.
So Morocco, the North African teams typically dominate this, and it's not surprising the countries that do well. North African teams and the Congo teams, and if you look at them, when you look at the continental leagues, those are the best leagues on the continent. The African,
those are the teams that win the Champions League.
The CAF Champions Leagues, those are the countries that make it to the semifinals regularly. Their leagues are functioning. Nigeria, again, not to make it Nigeria centric, but obviously that's where we look at a lot. They don't do so well of recent because their league is non-functioning.
And again, and the point I was going to make is it all goes back to the development of the sport, right, in the local country. So everything is a function of that piece. Listen, it's not luck, or it's not by some kind of fate that Senegal has put together a squad that all of a sudden has players that are highly demanded on the highest platform in Europe. I remember when Patrick Vieira and the current Senegalese coach, what's his name? I forgot his name. The current guy was coach. They came together and they opened up the Ambars, which was a development academy in Senegal. And since then, there have been several that have opened up. And when you look at the population of Senegal, it's a small country. Population is not that vast. And to be able to get players that can be developed at this level, it speaks to the amount of work that's being put in Senegal. And that's just a function of, that's what it comes down to. And if you look at a lot of these African countries, they just don't do the work. That's what it comes down to. They're not putting in the effort to create a scenario where their coaches are getting trained and getting licenses at the highest level. Their youth football is growing and developing. They're putting out players that are highly skilled and highly technical. That's all it is, man.
It also helps that they get a lot of players that from France too.
Some of them are from France, yeah. Some of them from Sadio Mane isn't. I don't think Sarr isn't. I don't think Sarr is French. Yeah. So when you look at some of those guys, you're like, hey, so Senegal, they actually have a good conveyor belt of players that can come through.
It takes a few selfless people in higher positions to actually care about the country and care about the country's football. Because one thing that we suffer from Africa, and it's no secret, is everyone's very, very greedy, especially those at the top. They see an opportunity to make a bit of extra cash for their pocket, and rather than putting it into what it's supposed to go into, they take it for themselves. And I guess a country like Nigeria is lucky because you produce so much talent that
we beg to differ on
This
this
is why
platform.
we're not in the World Cup.
Because you have such talented players, it can kind of cover up what's actually going on. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Because you're able to produce a Victor Osimhen, Joe Aribo, Wilfred Ndidi. Do you know what I'm trying to say? And a country like Somalia, obviously nowhere near the caliber of Nigeria. It's a lot because we don't have the talent. We need every single penny to go into the team to improve it, and it's a lot more noticeable with the smaller countries than it is with the bigger countries. But it's a continent-wide problem without a shadow of a doubt.
No, it is a continent-wide problem. And if you look at what a lot of countries are doing these days, instead of trying to put in the effort into developing and creating structures like develop talent and get quality players, they wait for someone else to do it, and they just go poach the guy. Oh well, you know what? There's this Somali kid that's playing for the Dutch U20 team. We're going to go convince his parents that he needs to come play for Somalia instead. And that's what you see people like, especially in Nigeria.
But then you try and convince them. But then what facilities are you even considering? Because he's used to playing for Ajax his whole career. Do you know what I'm trying to say? And you're telling him to come play.
Correct.
And Mo, it's funny you say that, man. You know how you were talking. I'm sure you watched that Nigeria versus Ghana match. I don't know if one of the things you would have noticed is the horrible state of that pitch that the Eagles were playing. And I mean, we have guys that are used to playing on lush green surfaces week in, week out, and then you bring them and tell them to play on that useless field, and you expect them to perform optimally.
And this is Nigeria we're talking about. So imagine how it is when you're Somali.
And speaking of the greed, we were just talking about the women's Falcons, how great they are. Just yesterday, they refused to practice ahead of the third place match because they're being owed bonuses. These are women that just literally, if you watch that semifinal match against Morocco where they were playing against the fans, 11 against 9, the Super Falcons lost the match on penalty kicks, but they came out looking much more valiant than all the other teams that have won 9 championships because they fought to the very end. They gave every sweat, every ounce of blood they had. If they could give, they gave it, and they're being owed their allowances, not just from this tournament, but from years in arrears. It's demoralizing.
It's shameful is what it is. Like that should not even be something that should come up in a conversation.
I'm a very optimistic person normally. You know what I'm trying to say? Like I speak about my country and my continent in the highest possible way. You know what I'm trying to say? But there's no doubt that there are issues, like fundamental issues from the very bottom that obviously need to change if we want to see improvement in our football. And you can see that with Senegal. They put in about 5-6 years of foundation building, and you look at them now. You've got an entire country where your players are playing in Champions League finals on a regular basis, and that's something that's unheard of when you're African.
So it's even more than 5 or 6 years. Like what Bomo was saying, it starts from investing in all these academies that they had and making sure they're doing the right thing, not just siphoning money, and using it to enrich the pockets of politicians. Are we going to talk American football at all? Because
that was going to be my next transition. Because Mohammed, we got to get you back because I was going to transition. So what's the vibe in London like for the NFL and like these games that they have there? It's once a year. If I'm not mistaken, they go over there once a year. Sometimes they'll take the Jaguars or they'll take, the Dolphins.
So there's 4 games. There's 4 games a year here in
4
London.
Games a year? Okay.
I think this year it's 3.
This year's 3?
I think it's 3 this year.
Because the 4th one they're taking to Germany this year. So there's
going to be a 4th one in Europe in general. Okay, yes.
Yeah, so in Europe there's usually 4 games a year, but this year they're taking it's actually Tom Brady coming to play in Munich, which is incredible. But I feel like because of that one, it's always in the month of October, so it's always like week 4, 5, 6, etc. And the whole city, the NFL market is so well that they close down entire roads, and They make it just NFL stands all over the place. So they're trying very, very hard to bring it to the country. And I feel like there is a real passion for it, you know, like there's a real love for the game here. It's growing per year. And I'm glad it is. I mean, I'm not too interested in it because the plan is for me to move to the States anyway and cover it out there. But it's good to see it growing where it is at home, you know.
How did you get into football yourself?
I mean, my entire family lives in the United States. So from the age of like 6, I was going to Boston. 2004 was the first time I went to the Gillette Stadium to watch a game. I had no idea what was going on. I was like 8 years old, but I just see it. So it was always something I was surrounded with. It's always something that I was around. You know what I'm trying to say? So I just ended up falling in love with the sport. The same way anyone chooses their sport or whatever, this was the sport that just attracted me the most. Obviously, more so in the last 12 years when I understood exactly what was going on. But it was just always something I was surrounded by. So I was never one of those people that was like, that was opposed to it. I was always open to it. And then once I understood exactly the game, and the more I got into it, I was like, yo, this is the greatest thing to ever.
You won't hear too many arguments from me. What team do you root for?
I root for the Minnesota Vikings.
Okay. And they're coming to England this year.
They are coming to London this year. They've come regularly. Actually, they come every 4 years. They've actually come every 4 years.
Yeah.
So so you're in the NFC. What do you think about 49ers then?
The 49ers, the issue with
No, I was asking Mohamed because
okay.
Vikings are in NFC. What do you think about 49ers?
I feel like they're gonna give the reins to Trey Lance this year, right?
Right.
Very, very, very talented quarterback. The defense, you know what the defense is saying. We don't need to talk about that. And I feel like with what Trey Lance can do and all of the different types of throws he can make, Kyle Shanahan is going to have a blast because he's very. I feel like Shanahan was limited to the plays he can call because of Jimmy Garoppolo's inability to throw outside of the numbers. Do you know what I'm trying to say? So he was limited to intermediate crossing passes and screens and all of these kind of gadget plays. But with Trey Lance, if Trey Lance is what we think he can be, this is going to be a completely different offense to what we're used to seeing.
The only thing I'll say about Trey Lance is that, quarterback is the hardest position to play in just about all sports. And it takes playing to really get better, right? There's this statistic that says a good marker for success for NFL starting quarterbacks is 30 starts in college, right? And Trey Lance barely played 1 year. And his second year was a COVID year. He played 1 game. And that was it. And pretty much came into the NFL as a rookie. He played 2 games. So he's developing. In the NFL, the coverage schemes are going to change. It's not what you saw. And then he also played in one step lower in Division I AA football. So he didn't play in the highest level. So there are question marks. There's question marks about his motion of his throw.
But if you see the two games that he did play, you could see like you can see something there that he's going to be a competent quarterback at the very least. The arm is unquestionable. The mobility is unquestionable. It's just a matter of, can he read coverages? Can he dissect the coverages? And that's going to come with
big if. That's a big
well, who quoted that stat about you have to play 30 games in college for you to be?
These are the scouts that when how they do all these draft scouting. So this is how they basically are scouting quarterbacks coming out of college. Oh, Bill Parcells, actually, he's one given credit for that particular statistic.
Because Brady didn't have that. I don't think Brady had that at Michigan.
Brady
he split time. Brady split time.
He started games. At least he was playing, not necessarily starting, but he was playing minutes. And Brady, you got to remember, he was the quarterback that they ended up settling with even in Michigan. I think it was him and Drew Henson, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they went back and forth, and he ended up, and that's why that was dropped his draft status to the 6th round. But
that and he was very unathletic with an.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think
he played 27 games in college, Michigan.
Yeah, so he was under that margin. That's why.
That was over 4 years, though.
Over 4 years, yeah.
Over 4 years.
But that's the other thing too. They also say if you're a senior, junior, or senior, obviously you to amass those number of starts, you're gonna have to play. So it's not just the starts; it's also the reps you're getting in practice. Over time. That is again is just a number. It doesn't mean that you don't play 30. Obviously, you're not. It's just a number marker that they use. And if you're looking at those reps, it means you're developing over time. And one of the things is they're always very scared to get quarterbacks only play 2 years, or junior quarterbacks in the NFL, because they're like, not enough unless you pretty much exceeded. And also the level of the other part of it too is the level of competition you're playing. Brady's 27 starts are in the Big Ten, when back in those days, that was where it was Big Ten, Pac-10, SEC. Those are the three conferences back when Brady was playing. The ACC wasn't as it is today,
Yeah,
But again,
I think
Brady fell because no one thought he was that good.
correct. Yeah, and that's the point. I think sometimes those guys, a lot of these scouts and people who predict stuff, they have this superiority complex that they think they could just automatically decide how a guy is going to do. Because if you look at like Steve McNair, for instance, he went to Alcorn State, which is 1AA as well, and we saw what he did at Houston. Like,
but you can't. Steve McNair was a first round pick, so you can't say people on.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, sometimes they try to rule guys out, and until you put them in that heat, because there are other unknown factors that kick in, right? You don't really know for certain. So, like, I mean, we'll see how he does at San Fran.
The Niners gave up 3 first round picks for him. So
I mean, even if he's kind of good, Kyle Shanahan will put him in the positions for him to execute. Like he's basically a genius when it comes to offensive coordinating, like offensive play calling and play designing. And there was just certain things you couldn't even attempt to do with Jimmy Garoppolo because his arm doesn't allow him to do that.
Jimmy, we hate Jimmy here. I'll be honest with you. So there's this stat that goes around that with Jimmy at quarterback, the 49ers are 35-16. With everybody else at quarterback, they're 8-20 something, 22, something like that. Yeah. So that does kind of poo-poo Shanahan a little bit, but I do understand that all the other backup quarterbacks, first of all, they weren't as talented as this kid Trey Lance is. So who knows? But
that's why I don't like QB wins as a stat. It's terrible.
Hey, it's crazy, man. Listen, we need to bring you back for just an exclusive NFL session because I have some other questions I want to ask about NFL.
I'm annoyed that you guys had me talking about.
I know Mike has to be somewhere in a few minutes. Was that?
I said I'm annoyed that you guys had me talking about the sport that I don't like as much. I'm just passionate about Africa.
By the way,
come on, man. Mohamed. This is a World Cup year. We don't have a choice. And I wonder how that's going to play out. By the way, World Cup is going to be run during the NFL season. You know that, right?
I know,
so
100%.
That's going to be interesting, man, because they've never gone head to head before.
The world. See, there's two worlds. First of all, NFL, nothing punctuates that world. That world is solid.
Yeah, it's
nothing is going to mess up that world. NFL is its own world, its own multiverse.
Wow, I just
read. The World Cup is going to be. I mean, there are conglomerations of people that watch the World Cup as closely and watch the NFL. Perhaps not as much, but people will watch the World Cup because, one, it starts during Thanksgiving week. So a lot of college football would have ended. And all the other sports, baseball's over. All the other sports are kind of sort of like in the dead periods, basketball, hockey, in America anyway.
No NFL game will be on the same time as World Cup games. So you'll just have days where you watch because the World Cup games will kick off in the morning for you guys, whereas
yeah.
Well, NFL games kick off in the morning here too.
They kick off in the morning too, though. Late morning. Well, the earliest one is what, like 1 o'clock?
10 o'clock, 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m.
1 Eastern.
Eastern time.
No, but that's just one day though. The World Cup is 7 days a week. You know what I'm trying to say? You're having multiple games 7 days a week. So apart from Sunday, so if you're an NFL guy, Sunday, you don't care what World Cup game's going on.
I have 2 TVs anyway. I'll be watching. One game will be on the World Cup on Sunday. The other one will be on the NFL.
I have 5 TVs. I have 5 screens that are dedicated to just NFL. I can never be that guy that just watches Red Zone. I need to see how the play developed. I want to know what happened.
That's awesome. Yeah.
I'll tell you what we're going to do, man. We're going to do an NFL in London segment. And
I was going to say something, man. I like that Napoli jersey you got. What do you think about our man Victor Osimhen in
he loves Osimhen, man.
Bro, I think I think in the world of young strikers, it goes Erling Haaland and then Victor Osimhen. That's how highly I rate the guy, man. I think he's been unfortunate with injuries, and I don't accept anyone saying injury prone because they were freak injuries. Do you know what I'm trying to say? It was this year he missed about 3 months with a head collision, which was, I mean, and the year before that, it was a dislocated shoulder that you guys did to him, like at Nigeria.
It wasn't us; it was Sierra Leone.
Yeah, but then COVID. It's not like he's
football.
Hamstrings or it's not like he's pulling hamstrings or he's having muscle injuries and stuff like that. So if he can avoid these freak injuries, just a little bit of luck. I think one full season of Victor Osimhen's out of Napoli straight away, in my opinion.
So,
He's a
you think
solid
this is
player,
his
man.
last season in Napoli? I'm saying probably his last season in Napoli.
With a full healthy season, I think Victor Osimhen's out of Napoli for sure.
Yeah.
I think he goes. I think Bayern Munich, Man City,
Bayern
Munich, Man United.
United.
One of these massive teams.
And he's been in Germany before, so he knows that environment, right? So
Exactly.
he'll be
Bayern Munich
fine.
wanted him this year, but I think that's cooled down a little bit. But one full season of Victor Osimhen, and he's out there.
Yeah, I don't think he should go to Bayern right now because I don't know that he'll actually. You know, I need him in Napoli because they qualify for the Champions League. Let him go play. The only thing that sucks is that I feel like Napoli's squad just got depleted a bit. You know, even though Lorenzo Insigne was very selfish last year, never really seemed to ever release the ball on time, but he's gone. Koulibaly being gone, and when you look at the guys they brought in, I just don't feel like they're.
No, I feel like with Napoli we are we've always had an incredible scouting system. Like the year we lost Cavani, Lavezzi, we replaced them with Mertens, Callejon, Alan, Gulam, Koulibaly, Pepe Reina. Do you know what I'm trying to say? So Napoli, I mean, this is a conversation we can have at the end of the transfer window, but for now, kind of just. I mean, I've got faith that Napoli will replace those adequately. Koulibaly is irreplaceable. I don't see anyone unless we bring in Van Dijk. There's no one that's replacing Koulibaly, so we need to do that as a team.
Why did it take Koulibaly so long to move though? Because I feel like at 31, his movement is a little too late. What took him so long?
The thing is, for a long period of time, he was the highest paid player in Serie A. So money, like Napoli broke every wage structure for Koulibaly to make sure Koulibaly stayed. And on top of that,
and De Laurentiis doesn't play fair in the market either.
Yeah, but I mean, but he does, to players like Koulibaly, he does give them a say. So if a bid comes in, he'll discuss it with the player and his agent. But then Koulibaly also wanted to stay. I mean, Naples is a beautiful city. I mean, normally I wouldn't see why anyone wouldn't want to stay there. Of course, if you want to play at the high. And Napoli were competing for titles almost every year, apart from the last 2 years, playing in the Champions League every year. So, I mean, unless you're ring chasing, as they say in the NBA, you're competing for the title, you're competing in the Champions League, you're winning the cup regularly, and you're the highest paid player in the league. He had it going for him, you know. So
yeah. All right, thanks for coming on, man. We'll have to wrap it up, but we'll definitely schedule in.
We need to have a full NFL conversation.
Yeah. We'll talk about your sport because
do you play fantasy football there?
Yes, I do.
Oh,
I played in 4 fantasy leagues last year. I won 3 of them.
There you go. Yeah, maybe we have a discussion right before the season begins. I think
season starts. Yeah, 100%.
Of course.
All right, guys. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.